So, hi. So I grew up in a medium-sized town outside of Boston, and yeah, huh? My neighborhood was 99.9% Italian and Irish. So much so that the only two families who weren't Italian and Irish were called the Greeks and the Mormons. But it wasn't like malicious. It was like, hey, did you hear the Mormons had a baby? Or don't forget to invite the Greeks and the Mormons to the block party. So I grew up in a nice neighborhood. It was up a hill, a dead-end street. I had a nice house, but I actually grew up poor. When I was 2 and my father was 32, he had a stroke, and he never recovered. And we were outside one day, and I was sitting in my kiddie pool, and I was 3 years old, and barreling down the street came a girl in a bathing suit, barefoot, who I'd never seen before. And she said, "Can I go in your splash?" And she was in my life. This was my first friend. And she had just moved in with her family across the street, 8 kids. She was the youngest. She was the 7th girl. And in an Irish family, that meant she was lucky, and she was very lucky to me. Our parents got along great. Her father was Italian. My father was Italian. Her mother was Irish. My mother Irish. Perfect. As my father got sicker and sicker, I started spending more time at their house. Now, I was an only child. I spent a lot of time in front of TV watching Benny Hill, which I didn't get, but I laughed at because I wanted to. I had headphones on, book, dark room. Now I was surrounded by 8 kids. My new friend Irish step danced everywhere. They were running and screaming and yelling about each other's possessions. And in the morning, it was like an assembly line. We all went to the same Catholic school. Yeah, I went to Catholic school, look at me. I think that Catholic school funds the whole tattoo, piercing, and manic panic industry. I even have Latin on my arm. I learned Latin. So it was like an assembly line. We'd run down the stairs all in the same uniform. There were tons of white pieces of bread on the counter. It was peanut butter, peanut butter, peanut butter, jelly, 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 bag, bag, bag. And then all the girls had long hair. So we'd line up. And my neighbor mother, yeah, I know that sounds like a show on TLC, but neighbor mother, she would just line us up and say, 1 braid or 2. And she had all these elastics on a doorknob. 1 braid or 2, braid, 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 next, braid, 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 next. We'd all go off to the same school. I was really jealous of this family. I wanted what they had. I had a really crazy childhood. I spent a lot of time in hospitals. I didn't go to Girl Scouts. I didn't go to dance. I didn't learn how to ride a bike. I bought a trike, by the way. Anyway, so one night before Christmas, I went in to ask my father if he wanted some orange juice, and I found him dead. And my mother asked for 1 ambulance. She said he was definitely dead. He had lived for 8 years. And they sent everything with a flashing light they could find in this town. Up my dead-end street, fire engines, cop cars, every single neighbor came out, and all of my neighbor family ran down in their bathrobes. I was at the door, and they said, "What happened?" And I said, he's dead. They covered my head to undo what I had just seen and ran me up the street and played Clue with me until morning. And then 2 months later, because, life is this way, my mother had a routine surgery, and she went into a coma. And I didn't know it at the time, but she had made my neighbor family my guardians. And so right at that time, I became a woman. And I called my neighbor sister, and I said, "You can have my boombox and my Dark Side of the Moon album." I was basically reciting my will, because I knew what hemorrhaging was from having a sick parent, but I didn't know what my period was. She was like, "Oh, God," and runs down, runs in the door of the bathroom holding a bag of maxi pads and a carton of ice cream. And she's like, "We have to have a talk." But I wasn't dying, right? So we went to visit my mother, and she did recover. And then we went to see Ghostbusters. Yeah. But over time, these people were still my guardians, and I learned everything from them. I learned an exquisite taste in horror movies like Friday the 13th when I was way too young, and Led Zeppelin. They taught me how to drive when I was 11 in the parking lot of a theater. When I had my first non-traditional marriage, my neighbor dad danced with me traditionally. When I had my second non-traditional marriage, they flew all the way to Hawaii to give me away again. And I have a moth in my face. How literal. Anyway, so basically, it actually took a village, or should I say, a neighborhood, to raise this child. Thank you.